Hey folks, this is now part 2 of my series on Bible chronology. If you have not yet checked out part 1, please go to my channel and do so now. Thanks. So in part 1 of this series, I covered the time period from the creation, which I have as 3967 BC, all the way down to the year of the flood, which I have as 2312 BC. So in part 2, I'm going to cover a very brief time period from the flood until the birth of Arphaxad. And the reason why I'm covering this brief 2-year period is because of some of the implications that this has on other chronology in the Bible. But this will bring us from 2312 BC, the year of the flood, to 2310 BC, the year of the birth of Arphaxad. Now, Genesis 5 verse 32 says, "And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth." Now, does this mean that Noah had all 3 of his sons in the same year, his 500th year? Were they triplets? Or were their births spread out over a number of years, and Noah simply began having his sons starting in his 500th year? Well, that latter interpretation of the text would seem to be the case, because if we look elsewhere, we can see from Genesis chapter 7 verse 6 that Noah was 600 years old when the flood occurred. But then, in Genesis chapter 11 verse 10, we read that these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And this would seem to indicate that Shem could not have been born in Noah's 500th year, because if he was, then he should have been 102 when Arphaxad was born, not 100, because Noah was 600 when the flood occurred. Therefore, if Arphaxad was born 2 years later, Noah would have been 602, and Shem, if he was born in Noah's 500th year, would have been 102, not 100. So why then did Genesis 5 verse 32 state that Noah was 500 years old and begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth? Because Shem would have had to have been born when Noah was 502, not 500, in order for Shem to be 100 years old when Arphaxad was born, as we saw in chapter 11. Well, that would suggest, then, that Shem was originally not the oldest son. He was not the firstborn. That the birth order here is being changed to reflect a change in priority. Noah would have begun having children at age 500, but Shem could not have been the firstborn of those children. He would have been born when Noah was 502. So if Shem wasn't born first, why does it list his name first when naming Noah's children, as we can see in this verse? Well, to understand the solution to this problem, we need to turn to Genesis chapter 9, starting at verse 20, and read the story that occurs there through the end of the chapter. And it says in verse 20, "And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died." Now, what appears to have happened in this story is that because of this incident, Noah rearranged the prioritization of the birth order of his sons. In other words, another child takes over the position of being the firstborn, the preeminent child in the family line, the succession or heir to the throne, if you will. And that child appears to be Shem, because he's listed first in the new order of blessing. So the reason why I addressed this brief 2-year period in biblical chronology is to show that when we see a series of the names of the children of a given patriarch, that might indicate the possible rearrangement of prioritization of the birth order. such as in the case of, say, Cain and Abel and Seth. We know all of their names, yet Seth, although not being the physical firstborn, takes over the preeminent role of being the firstborn for the rest of the progeny of mankind. And likewise, in the case of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, even though Shem may not have physically been the firstborn, he takes over the role or the preeminent spot of being the firstborn in that order, so therefore we see all of the names of those children listed to indicate that some sort of branching or shifting of the order of preeminence has taken place. And that's a principle that might apply in other places in the Bible as well. So that's why I wanted to address this particular circumstance. So something to keep in mind going forward. Now, in the next part of this 10-part series on Bible chronology, we'll cover the time period from Arphaxad down to Terah, the father of Abraham. So be sure to check out my channel for part 3 coming soon.